Greetings, students. Today we're going to discuss practice test number 5 for pre-algebra. Let's begin. Question 1. Evaluate if x is -4. The -4 replaces the x. Show out your step. Get some partial points. We have -12 plus 5. Opposite sign. Subtract. That'll be -7. So that is 12 minus 5. Keep the sign of the 12. Question 2. -132 divided by -4. Show out that you replace the x with -4 and then put your answer. That way, if you get the division wrong, you can perhaps get some partial points here. Or you will get some partial points. Not perhaps. You will. So 4 into 132 is 33. All right. And that's positive because they're both negative. 33. 35. Question 3, multiply 5 6/10 by 4 3/10. So 5 6/10, 4 3/10. Multiply. So we have here 6 times 3 is 18. 3 times 50 is 150. So I did 3 times 6, 18. 3 times 50, 150. Oops, got to move it down so you can see what I'm doing. Sorry. Next thing, I'm going to have 40 times 6. So 40 times 6 is 240. And 40 times 50, which is 2,000. Add it all up. We have an 8. We have a 10, which we carried that one. We have a 4, and we have a 2. Put the decimal in the middle because it's 2 decimals here. There's 2 spots of decimals here. And we have our finished answer, 24 8/800. There will be plenty of partial assigned here for doing any of the multiply steps correctly. So in other words, multiplying 3 by 6 correctly to get 18, or 3 by 50 to get 150, or 40 by 6 to get 240, or 40 by 50 to get 2,000. Lots and lots of partial assigned there for the question. All right, question 4. Round to the first spot here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots to the left of the decimal, so that is the 10,000. So how we would read this number, we would say this is 14,827. So that 1 represents 10,000s. And we're going to round to that first spot, so that 1 is going to stay as a 1. It's not going to round up because it's followed by a 4. And then the other numbers here are going to change to zeros. So that 4 changes to a 0, the 8 changes to a 0, the 2 changes to a 0, the 7 changes to a 0. And all these other 3 numbers after the decimal change to a 0, but I don't need them because I rounded it up. All right, question 5. We're going to take 2 times by 4. 2 times by 4. That's 8. We're going to add to that 3 times by 5. 15. So 8 plus 15 is 23. Divided by, what goes in the bottom here is 5 times by 4. 5 times by 4. 20. Again, this is a diagonal multiplication. When you're adding fractions together, you got to get a common denominator. In this case, the denominator is 20. Make them into 20s, in other words, the denominator. And you do that by diagonal multiplication. 4 by 2 is 8. 3 by 5 is 15. 8 plus 15, 23. 4 by 5 is 20. This isn't going to reduce. There may be a future question where it does happen to reduce, but this one's not it. Alrighty, next one, number 6. 11 minus 16 plus 8. So again, I can do 11 minus 16 as my first step, or I can do negative 16 plus 8. That 16, however, is minus, or it's negative. So I'm going to do the 16 plus 8 first. It's a negative 16. That's not a positive 16. That's a negative 16 plus 8. So in other words, I can either write my work as 11 minus 16 is negative 5, and negative 5 plus 8 is 3. Or I can write my work as negative 16 plus 8 is negative 8, and 11 minus 8 is 3 as well. Question 7, multiply before you add. This is 6 plus 40, because 5 times 8 is 40. So that is 46. Question 8. Multiply before you subtract. And it's a negative 2 times a negative 8, so it becomes a positive 16. Minus 2 times a negative 8, positive 16, which is 28 in terms of my finished sum in this case. Same signs I had. Question 19. Do the square first. 6 squared is 36. That's a positive 6 squared. The negative goes in front of that. So that's actually positive 6 squared negated after we square it. So we have 12 minus 36 minus 10. Now I can do the minus 36 minus 10 first, or I can do the 12 minus 36 first. That 36, however, is negative, not positive. So if I'm going to do the minus 36 minus 10, that's minus 46. Or if I'm going to do 12 minus 36, that's minus 24. Either way is appropriate. Just keep in mind the 36 is not positive. It's negative. It's minus. So I have negative 24 minus 10, or like I said, otherwise it would have 12 minus 46, which is negative 34. Sorry, I was just making sure my work was right. I was just thinking about making sure my work was right. Don't like to do these wrong. All right, question 10. Graph the points, identify the quadrants. So this is right 5, point A, right 5 from the center. So right 5 and down 1. Bam, there it is. That is in quadrant 4. Quadrant 4. You can use the Roman numeral for 4, which is IV, or the number 4. Question 10. Negative 8, so that's left 8. Now hopefully that's 8 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, that's 8. That's 8 right there. Left 8, up 2. And if you're a little bit off on these, I don't usually take off points. If you're just a little bit off, if you're quite a ways off, I do. That's quadrant 2. What is quadrant 2? All right, question 12 and 13. Distribute means to multiply. It is a synonym for multiply. So I'm asking you to multiply. I'm asking you to multiply the 5 by the 3 and the 2. Or the negative 10 by the negative 3 and the 5 for that second question. So I'm going to take 5 times 3x. So that's 15x. And then minus 5 times 2 minus 10. Now that's minus 5 times 2, not because the 5 is negative, but because there's a minus separating the x and the 2 here. Has nothing to do with the 5 being negative. It has only anything to do with that being a minus between the x and the 2. Question 13, same deal. Negative 2 times by negative 3x. Negative 2, negative 10 times by negative 3x. So that is 30x plus negative 10 times by 5. That's minus 50. Again, we're distributing there. So we do negative 10 times by negative 3x, negative 10 times by 5. So these are each worth 4. Means there's 52 points on the front side this week. Moving along. Let me set up question 14 for us. I'm hoping some of you are getting helped out by these videos. I don't know if any of you are. I'm hoping by the end of the year, some of you will be decently acclimatized to these. Question 14. Combine like terms. This means add or subtract the common terms, the ones that have the same letter. So this is another synonym for add or subtract. So if they're the same signs, they add. If they're opposite signs, they subtract. Make sure they have the same letter, because this 10 doesn't have a letter, doesn't have a variable. So that 10 will not combine with the 8 and the 15. So this is going to be 8 minus 15x. So that's negative 7x. And then that 10's at the end. It doesn't have a variable. So it's just going to be minus 10 at the end of it. Question 15, a one-step equation. The step here is to divide by 11. So you can show the bar as a divide bar or as a divide symbol. You need to have the step if you want credit here. No step, no credit. You must have the divide by 11 step there written down, either like this or with a divide sign. Question 16, you're going to add 10 to 3. X divided by 5 equals 13. And you're going to times 13 by 5. You have to have the two steps written if you want credit here. So that's 65. Question 17. You're going to subtract the 8 from negative 16. Those are same signs add, so they make negative 24. Then you're going to divide by negative 2. Again, you can show it as a divide symbol or divide bar. X is 12. Two-step equations on number 16 and 17. You have an add or subtract step, then a multiply or divide step. Again, if it's a coefficient, that's an integer, you're going to divide by it. If it's a fractional coefficient, you're going to multiply. 16 was a fractional coefficient, x divided by 5, we multiplied by 5. 17 was an integer coefficient, we divided by 2, negative 2. All right, question number 18. Evaluate 6.9, 6.9. Nah, it's 6.3, 6 3/10 minus 4.9. The bigger number always goes on the top, the bigger absolute. Put the smaller number underneath, the smaller absolute. And then if they're opposite signs, subtract. If they're same signs, add. So here I've got a minus and a plus, so this will be subtracting. Borrow from the 6, make it a 5. Change that 3 into a 13, or 1.3 if you include the decimal. 13 minus 9 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. 1 and 4/10. Decimal comes straight down. Question 19. Bigger number on the top. So 8 and 2/10, 2 and 5/10. These are both minuses. Same signs add. So that's a 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. And that's a 10. Keep the sign when you add, when you do same signs add. So that's negative 10.7 because those are both negative to start. Question 20. Dividing by an integer into a fraction is the same as multiplying that denominator by that fraction. So 1 over 8 times 12 is 1 over 96. What's up, Jeff? He's next row down at the end on the left, on the right. Yeah. He's in the bottom corner on the right, yeah. Yeah. Question 21. Greatest common factor, least common multiple. So the greatest common factor, least common multiple. What we're going to do here is we're going to figure out what they both divide by, the largest thing they both divide by, and what they both divide into. And we do this by using prime factors. So a 45 is a 9 times a 5. And that 9 is a 3 times a 3. So in other words, a 45 is equal to a pair of 3s and a 5. So a 45 equals 3 times 3 times 5. That 18 is a 9 times a 2. And again, that 9 is a pair of 3s. 3 times 3. So that 18 is 3 times 3 times 2. There'll be lots of partial credit assigned just for having this right here, for breaking down the numbers properly. So, the greatest common factor is the items that are shared between the two factorizations. So both of these have 2 3s. In other words, the greatest common factor here is 3 times 3 because they both have 2 3s in their what's called prime factorization, or when I broke them down. So my greatest common factor is 3 times 3, which is equal to 9. That's my GCF. Now my least common multiple is my greatest common factor timesing by the other factors that were not in common. So my least common multiple will be 9 times 2 times 5, which is 90. More intuitively speaking, the greatest common factor is what both numbers divide by, the largest number that both of them divide by, and the least common multiple is the largest number that they both divide into. So in other words, 9 goes into 45 and 18 evenly, and 45 and 18 go into 90 evenly. 45 goes into 90 twice, 18 goes into 95 times. Question 22. A 63 is a 9 times 7. And a 9 is a 3 times 3. So 63 is 3 times 3 times 7. 14 is a 7 times 2. So I'm looking at this one, and I'm saying here, well, we have a single 7 in common. That is my greatest common factor, a single 7. In other words, both of these divide by 7 evenly. My least common multiple, we're going to take that 7, we're going to times it by 2, I'm going to times it by 3 and 3. That was my 9. All right, so 7 when you times it by 2 is 14, and 14 when you times it by 9 is 126. All right. Moving along. The properties of equality. So with the properties of equality, what I like to do is start with the ones that I know the best. What does that mean? Well, the ones that I know the best are the ones that are the easiest for me to remember. So anything that's a zero property should end up being 0 when it's done. So I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing here, I've got 6 times 0 equals 0, and 8 plus negative 8 also equals 0. So both of these are zeros. This one here is an inverse because the inverse property says the opposite. Something plus its opposite makes 0. So my inverse property of equality, probably, there it is right there. And my 0 property of equality is going to be, I'm sorry, gotta move it down for you so you can see better. There you go. My 0 property of probability also makes it 0. So that's going to be this one here. 6 times 0 equals 0. All right, next thing. Distributive property is the one where we have the parentheses and the item multiplies into the parentheses. So I'm looking over these and I'm thinking to myself, which one is the item multiplied into the parentheses? Oh, we're doing distributive property, sorry. Distributive property, this one, right here. It's multiplied into the parentheses. All right, and now I have to decide the two ones that, or the three ones that sometimes give me a little bit of trouble as well. I understand your confusion here on these three because sometimes they give me confusion too. So the identity property, what it means is that it doesn't change. Something's identity is always consistent. So like if I'm saying the identity property, the item doesn't change from the original item. So 8 plus nothing equals 8. That would be an identity property, or 8 times 1 equals 8, where the number starts off as an 8 or a 9 or a 10, and it ends up as the same item again. And now we're deciding between commutative and associative property. The commutative versus the associative property. So the associative property always has at least 3 items. The commutative property only has 2 items. So what I do to remember this is I ask myself which one has 2 items, which one has 3 items. 3 items. So in this case, the associative property is this one here, where the parentheses move. Associative property means parentheses move. And the commutative property is the other one, where the items change order. That's what associative and commutative mean. Commutative means you can change the order of the items. Associative means you can change the order of the parentheses. Items mean the numbers. Commutative means you can change the order of the numbers. Associative means you can change the orders of the parentheses. Anyhow, so that is what our test looks like this week. Come in before and after school, and we can work the questions together. Again, if you would prefer. The issue here again is learning the questions appropriately. Good luck.